Hello, everybody. How are we doing? I am Liz Prue, VP of Marketing here at Base, and I'm so excited for this week's Base Live event. We have the wonderful Maggie Jacobs here. Hello, Maggie.
Hey, Liz. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. For those of you that do not know Maggie, which I know are very few because Maggie is incredible, Maggie has spent 10 plus years working with C-suite executives where she has excelled in turning the seemingly impossible into possible. She's also a trainer and author of the Elevated EA, Find Your Voice and Own Your Future as an Executive Assistant. And in today's chat, we will be talking about her book and all of the wonderful nuggets that it entails, as well as weaving in some tips for your annual review, whether that is in a few weeks or if your fiscal year ends technically next year. This will be a really, really helpful chat for everybody. Maggie spoke at our summit back in October, and it was one of our most viewed, most engaged sessions. And so we are so happy to have you back. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Good. Well, let's just dive right in because, again, we had so many questions ahead of time, and I want to make sure we get to most of those as well as ones that pop up here in the chat. So if you do have a question for Maggie, drop it in the chat and we will get to that throughout the discussion and then Q&A at the end. But to kick things off, let's talk a little bit about annual reviews and or job seeking tips. So a lot of folks that were fortunate enough to keep their job throughout this crazy year, they're up for their reviews. And then unfortunately, a lot of folks lost their job and are looking for a new job. So I know that your book and all of your blogs, you have wonderful job seeking tips, interview tips in particular. So I would love to dive into that a little bit. So if someone is currently searching for a new role, the main question we get in this community is, where do I even start? Do I go on LinkedIn? Do I reach out to my network? What do I do?
Great question. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge every single one of you for first being on this call. And secondly, if you're looking for work, I've been there. I know what that's like. And I want to acknowledge you, your commitment, your dedication, and your effort to what you've done previously and what you're going through and what you're about to embark on. I know it's a challenging time. And so know that you're seen, heard, you're valued and appreciated, and your time will absolutely come. I promise you. So where do you start? If you don't agree with what I say, that's okay. Just all I ask is keep an open mind throughout the session. You can take what you want and leave the rest. It's totally cool. So my personal favorite is start with who you know. You know, or I would think you would know, a vast network of EAs or people you've worked with previously, right? Who did you work with in the past careers, past chapters? Reach out to them. If you're a high performer, which you probably are if you're on this session, people have great things to say about you. They want to work with you again. They can refer you out to their network, but you've got to do what? You've got to actually ask. You've got to ask. You've got to put yourself out there. And I know for me personally, that's not easy to do. Second place to start is LinkedIn. I have a lot to say on LinkedIn, so I won't spend too much time there, but you have an incredible network available to you. One thing I wanted to say, and this is an instant value bomb for this conversation, is go on your LinkedIn, grab your URL and drop it in the chat. Connect with each other that's on this call. Liz told me there's over 400 registrants here. Think of expanding your network by 400 people. That's a massive opportunity for you. So those are the two places I would start.
That's wonderful advice. I think it's we were saying before we hopped on live that no matter what role you're in, no matter what industry, it's so hard to put yourself out there. It feels, it's easier to say, than, to drop your LinkedIn profile. So I think that is a great way to kick off this session. Everyone drop your LinkedIn profile in the comments and start building your network right now. Great advice.
Absolutely.
So I love that you talk a lot about how to just rock an interview. It reminded me, I took a course in college and it was my senior year and it was called Interview Principles and Practices. And we did all these mock interviews and I was like, this is this will be an easy, like, read off course. It was to this date, like, the best course I ever took. I
That's
think that,
amazing.
a lot of times when we talk about interview tips, it can be a little surface level, and I would love to hear your thoughts on, what is, what's one question maybe that you personally ask when you're conducting interviews, or that you have, been asked in an interview, and overall advice.
Okay. I'm going to start with surface just quickly because I think
Mhm.
it's important. And we just came off a recent EA interview cycle at the current company I work with, and that's 6 Sense. And that is, again, these are surface 101. I think I'm stating the obvious, but you'd be surprised. So be on time, be early, right?
Yeah.
This is your time to shine. uh, Ask questions, and not about time off, not about work-life balance, although yes, that is important, not about benefits, but what's the culture like? What is my 30, 60, 90-day expectation? What will success look like? If you're speaking to the executive, ask quality, thoughtful questions. If you're speaking to other administrative peers on your team, say, how do you interact? How do you support each other? What do you see are some of the biggest challenges? Just really quality questions that show you're interested in the role, you're interested in the company. Because at the end of the day, people are asking themselves from the hiring lens, will this person help me improve my work situation, right? Like, what's in it for me? That's the
Mhm.
inherent question in any conversation. People are interested in what's in it for them. How will you make their jobs easier?
Yeah.
And do they want to work with you, right? When we're in the office environment, it's minimum 8+ hours a day, let's say. And so, do you want to spend time with these people? Do you want to help them reach their next level? And do they want to do the same for you? So always go in with that lens. Um, some of the more quality questions. Let's see. There's actually three that I absolutely love, and I'll quickly uh, cue those up. And one of them is, this is not mine, this is courtesy of Al Hussein, thank you very much, is, who do you become when things go wrong? And that's a question for the executive that you'd be working with. And it's not, don't just listen to what they say. Watch their body language, their tone of voice. Are they shocked that you asked the question? Are they quick to respond? Does it sound boilerplate? Or is it well thought out? Do they pause and actually go in and reflect? Because that's important. If you feel like you're really jiving and you're connecting with the other administrative peers that may work with this executive, ask them that question too. Who does that person become when things go wrong? Because you want to know that. And if it's a transparent organization, they'll tell you, right? They talk
Mhm.
about the warts and all because we all have them. Another one, my husband gave me this one when I was interviewing, when we had a new incoming CEO, and I was like, I'm not asking him that. He said, just do it. And I did. And I only would say only ask the executive this question if you want the job, if you're staying, because people work with people, not necessarily companies. So if you
Yeah.
think you're going to attach yourself to this executive, say, what would make you leave? Like, they're not expecting that, right? Again, it's one of those,
Mhm.
whoa. But you want to hear, because then
Mhm.
you can start to look for those things if they happen, because we don't have golden parachutes. If that executive leaves, at larger companies will probably be, redistributed, but smaller companies, you may be toast. We just don't
Mhm.
know. And so you want to be able to look for those signals early on. And then last one, my absolute favorite, and I recognize these are all bold questions, and that is with the executive. Do you have a plan for your personal development? And then just see how they react. Just ask very curiously,
Mhm.
because most of us don't, right? We come in, we do our jobs, we get pulled in so many different directions. But if you have someone that's truly committed to their growth and their development, I'm a fan of the phrase, what got you here will not get you there. It's also a book. But we've got to continuously learn, grow, and stretch to not only elevate ourselves, but to uplift those around us. And so, do you have a plan for your personal development, your personal growth? Those are my top three.
I love that. I particularly love that last one, because that's something, as in the community, in this, our Facebook community in particular, for those of you in our Facebook group watching now, there's been a lot of discussion around, how do I ask for investment in my own personal or professional development, and how do I justify budget for that? And if you don't start introducing that topic or having those discussions from day one, it becomes a lot harder to make those asks. So I
Absolutely. When I'm interviewing, that's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up. When I'm interviewing, I kick things off. I would not be here where I am sitting here with you today, Mr. CEO, had it not been for the countless hours and dollars and time and energy that I've invested in myself so I can help you reach your next level. That I start all interviews that way.
That's awesome. That leads into my next question of, and this is something that we all battle with. How do you find the balance between being confident or coming across arrogant in an interview? Because I think some of us sometimes shy away from saying, hey, I've done all of these things for fear of, I don't know, just for fear of, it's hard to brag about yourself, right?
It's a fine line. And if you go, now I walk the other side of that fine line at times, but you just got to own it. And I attended this workshop recently called I Am Remarkable, and I'll talk a little bit about that, but it's not bragging if it's based on facts. So I'll repeat that again, it's not bragging if it's based on facts. Go read your executive bios, your C-suite bios. They talk about these accomplishments, these M&As, these acquisitions, these IPOs, these 25 years experience in XYZ. Those are facts. You're not bragging. You're sharing your achievements and your contributions. And so I'm going to go there. I'm going to make this a gender thing. I specifically think it's related to women. We are not encouraged, but I think it's just, if we show up assertive, it's seen as aggressive. If we brag, other women or men may look at us like, who does she think she is? Like, those are real thoughts. I even admittedly have those thoughts about others myself at times. I catch myself, but it's real. And so we have a tendency to play small and dim our lights. And now is not the time for that, particularly as administrative professionals. Like, it's now more than ever is your time to shine and really step out there and tell the story. Tell us about you. It's your time to shine. We want to hear from you.
I love it. And that's so true too for those of you that are still in an existing role and are coming up for your annual review. Talk about the things that brought you to the successes that you have at present. Like what were your wins this quarter? What attributed to that? I think, I can't remember if it was a past event or if it was one of the last session we did with you at our summit, but have a brag sheet, keep track of all of your wins.
Yep.
So that way you're not like racking your brain for, I know I did a really good job this year, but what exactly did I do? Keep a running tab of those things. So you just have a bank of your wins at the ready for those types of conversations.
I have a phrase, and my CEO says this often, and he says, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And I'll say it again, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And that was a really tough pill for me to swallow just internally, because I thought, well, how do you measure what I do? The core responsibilities of travel, calendaring expenses, like who cares? That's my job, right? Like, but what about everything else beyond that? And so when you get present to tracking your achievements, your accomplishments, whatever it is, and that's where the brag sheet comes in. It's a simple Excel doc. It's nothing, no frills, broken out by month. Why month? So if you measure something, let's say your performance review, it's an annual basis. Like, what are you going to achieve in a year? You talk about one thing at the beginning of the year, you look at it again at the end of the year. You're not managing anything, right?
Yeah.
Nor measuring. That's an enormous time span. And so you can't manage what you can't measure. But if you start measuring things, right? If you do it once a year, how do you think you'll do? I don't know. But if you start doing it quarterly, monthly, weekly, or even daily, that's where things get interesting. The more you measure, the more you look at, the more you approach, you're going to be able to manage that. Here's an example. I want to lose weight this year. What does that mean? Like, many of us may feel that way or think that way, but if you say, I want to lose weight this year, good luck, right? you want to break that down. Start with quarters, start with months, start with weeks. The smaller the measurement, the better. And James Clear talks about this in Atomic Habits. It's stacking those incremental changes. Go walk around the block the first night, the second day, right? Because we're measuring in micro levels. Go walk around the block twice, 3 times, just continuously stack those small improvements, and you'll vastly improve over time.
I think that's great advice. And that's something as particularly now in our current work environment where I think it's fair to say that everyone has more on their plate than we usually have. We're
Totally.
also having to manage things that we've never managed before in the capacity that we have before, and there are a lot of unknowns. And so to have that that focus of kind of grounding you on what you should be working on, like knowing your goals, knowing what you're responsible for, and then saying, okay, what am I doing? Do all of those funnel up to some of that? And if they don't, like, let's de-stress a little bit.
Absolutely. Can I speak to, in terms of the review, because I want to recognize that not everybody is currently working and you're thinking this is really tough, right?
Mm-hmm.
How can I approach this? And maybe you do have a review cycle and you're thinking, well, I didn't do anything special this year. One, that's not true. Yes, you did. But in the I am remarkable exercise, we had to go through, and how many of us are going to raise our hands and say I'm remarkable? None of us, right? But she had us go through this exercise. So I would encourage you, you can do it right now, by the way, do it right now. Pull out a notebook and a sheet of paper, and at the top, whether you're working or not, this is specifically for you to get those creative juices flowing. There we go. I am remarkable because, write that at the top. Name off the things. And if you're like me, you just sit there and you stare at the page, right? You may get uncomfortable. You're like, oh, I don't know. I'm going to give you 5 right off the top. Maybe they're true for you, maybe you're not. Maybe they're not. But say, I am remarkable because I got out of bed this morning. This is COVID. These are real things, right? That's a huge accomplishment. Maybe you showered, you washed your face, you brushed your teeth, you showed up. You're attending this webinar. Like, start small, because I know these things can be challenging. We are all remarkable in our own way. Once you get going, if you're not working, write those things out of what you've accomplished in the past. Just start writing. You've negotiated vendor contracts. You've saved a ton of money. You planned a multi-person event. Speak to the achievements that people have thanked you for. Anytime someone has thanked you, write that down. What did they thank you for?
Wonderful advice. And I think I'm definitely going to do that. I think it's good to reward ourselves a little bit for our efforts, because we get so caught up in what's the next thing that we don't look back at what we've already accomplished. And I think that's just, we all do that, unfortunately.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So on that note, that kind of weaves in a little bit into talking about mindset, even mental health during all of this, and with your job. We've talked a lot about opening and creating opportunities for yourself, and bringing up things that otherwise your executive or whoever you're supporting may not bring up. If you're an introverted person, what does success look like for you in an EA role?
What does success look like for me in an EA role? It's continuously showing up. It's doing what's uncomfortable. I say this line, it's ridiculous and the worst vision I ever had. I was so short-sighted, but I say that I became an EA so I didn't have to talk to people. True story, right? Look at me now.
I know, right?
But I thought I could become an EA so I could just sit behind a computer screen, because I was terrified of public speaking. I didn't want to have to deliver presentations and stand up in a boardroom and whiteboard and do all this stuff. So I thought by becoming an EA, I wouldn't have to talk to people. Let that sink in. But so what did I do to get out of it? I just recognized that as I ascended in my career, and if you want to ascend in yours, you've got to do stuff that makes you feel uncomfortable, and recognize what it is. You're an extension of your executive. Do you think your executive is going to go hide in a hole and not show up and interact with their people? No, but it's the same with networking, right? I used to be the person that would go hide in the bathroom, go walk the halls, pretend I was doing something on my phone. I still do sometimes, but I want you to approach this with the mindset that you are doing your current self and your future self a disservice by not networking, by not connecting with other people. If you've got multiple decades of experience, think of how much knowledge and wisdom you can share with your peers. And if you're new, think of how much you can absorb and learn from your peers. Like, you got to get out of the introversion. I'm totally an introvert. I will stay at home with a book any day of the week, any night. But I understand the importance of the value that I add to my peers, my organization, and my future impact and growth.
What would be some of your advice for, because a lot of us are still remote, and even when this pandemic or year, if it ever it ever ends, when it ends, you know, a lot of companies are like, you know what, we're going to stay remote. So this may still be a semi-permanent thing. If you're looking to work on those people skills, if you're looking to connect with others and network virtually, and we have a lot of people in the chat right now asking or saying that they're working on public speaking, they're having a hard time.
Good job.
Is there any I mean, I guess a lot of you guys are connecting right now on LinkedIn. You know, you could set up a Zoom and just
Totally
chat. Or has there been anything that you've done in quarantine that's been helpful on that front?
in terms of public speaking or networking or
Kind
all of the above?
Just connecting with people, talking with people.
So you've got to force yourself, and I can't believe I'm going to share this publicly, but I previously when in the office, like if we're in the kitchen, like morning conversations on a Monday or a Friday, like I loathe conversations. Hey, how was your weekend? How was your coffee? It's like nobody actually cares, right? Like stop. So there's one colleague in particular, and I'll send her the link after we drop, but every time she'd see me, she knew how I felt because I posted an article about asking quality questions or whatever. So every time she'd see me, she'd say, what's something exciting you're working on? She would always catch herself. And so look up, I think it's HBR, something about asking quality questions, but we really want to take the time to engage with people, to get to know them, because we don't have those 2-minute, 30-second interactions, those micro interactions in the coffee room. And so let's say you're on Slack or Teams, just those public channels. If you have influence, and even if you don't, right? Like let's say you don't have a lot of public facing opportunities in your EA forums. If somebody asks a question, if they ask for recommendations, if they're asking for help, respond. There's such an opportunity here for you to really connect with people. And because it's not live interactions, you've actually got that barrier to hide behind, but to flex your social chops. And so no one's going to do it for you. You've got to work on it. But the more you do it, repetition, it's the mother of skill. The more you do it, it's going to become a muscle. You're going to be able to exercise it and just really connect with people. So do it. Like to your question about what am I doing personally, internally, I'm engaging more than I ever have been. And it was uncomfortable. I thought, what am I doing? You know, but I have COVID fatigue like everyone else. I'm ready to move on. And then externally, like, yes, I'm busy and there's a lot on our plate, but busy isn't an excuse not to continuously grow. Like all of you are here now. That's awesome. Jeremy's got weekly Wednesday coffees with EAs. There's EA forums available. If you see other Zooms and other opportunities like this, go join them. Go connect with your peers. We so need that connection right now.
We really do. And even if there is, like you said, Zoom and, you know, COVID fatigue, sometimes I have every Thursday night, actually, I have a weekly Zoom with one of my girlfriends, and we're not allowed to bring on our phones. We have to be drinking wine or doing whatever. It's just like having that. I think we have so much of this type of interaction in a work setting that it just drains you into not doing it to serve that personal side that we also need to continue nurturing as well. So that's a great point. Great point.
Absolutely.
You have a video on LinkedIn that I love. If you posted it and maybe in the summer about how much your mindset is costing you.
Yes.
And, I love that video. And so often, you know, we let doubt take over optimism. So I'd love for those that maybe haven't watched the video, or if you have new tips that you've collected since that was posted, I love your thoughts on how to combat that.
Absolutely. So combating second, but where does it come from? Right? I usually have props around here. It looks like I cleaned my desk off. But imagine I have this 5-pound dumbbell weight in my hand, right? We all bring our past to the present, and that affects how you show up, whether something happened to you, your boss did something, you didn't do something. Maybe your boss didn't deliver. Maybe your spouse, your kids, your parents, maybe you're holding on to something from years ago. Whatever it is, we all carry these stories, these situations of how we believe they impacted us in this backpack, and we show up with that to every interaction. And it comes with us. And people can feel your energy when you are absolutely responsible for the energy that you bring into a room. And so it's recognizing, it's reflecting, it's taking the time, like, what am I still carrying? Like, I've held on to stuff for more than I care to admit. It's in the book. But you've got to reveal it to heal it, and that's so important. So first, acknowledge that.
Mhm.
Once you're able to separate the past from the present, you can focus on the here and now, because the past is, what is it? I think I forget, but the future's fear, right? You're
Yeah.
creating that something isn't real, and the past, you're focusing on resentments and anger and stuff that's what still not here in the present. And so it's being able to separate what's actually real. How is this serving you? Is it serving you? You know the answer to that. I can't answer that for you. And then ask yourself, what would my life be like if I chose to unpack all of this stuff from that backpack that I'm carrying? Is
Mhm.
that the life you want? Do you want to carry around this heavy backpack of just crap? No, we don't. So let's slowly remove it all, say thank you for being here, protecting me, whatever it was,
Mhm.
and move on, because your future is infinite. This role is one of infinite possibilities, but until you heal from your past, you can't create the future that you want. And by the way, there's a future out there, if you can get past that, that's beyond your wildest dreams. I promise you that.
Do you have any exercises that you do, or even like check-ins where you are at a point where you're like, "Oh, okay, hold on. I need to do what you were just saying." Like just check in with myself.
Me personally, I get in funks. I'm not infallible. I'm not always like, let's go, let's go, let's go. But I quickly realized there's two. Tony Robbins talks about these 6 human needs, and the two kind of the most important ones are growth and contribution. There's the science of achievement, which is the tangible tools and all that. And then there's the art of fulfillment, right? And anyone can achieve, but if you're achieving and you're not happy, what good is that, right? If you've got money, titles, stock options, what good is that if you're not fulfilled? And so when I find myself in my own funk, I know what it is. I'm unfulfilled, right? The achieving is easy, but how do you get fulfilled? And that's through growth and contribution.
Yeah.
And you can't contribute if you're not growing. And so it all comes back to growing. All of you are here, you're growing.
Mhm.
Um, but it's the perfect example for me specifically. I'll give you a real one. Pre-COVID, we had a commute, which is 30 to 45 minutes, depending on what I did.
Mhm.
And I'd always listen to a podcast, whether it was Jeremy, John Maxwell, Tony Robbins. I have my lineup that I always listen to. Fast forward 6 months into COVID, and I'm miserable. I'm in this funk. I'm working, like, I'm at my machine like 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., because there's no commute, right? We're all working more.
Mhm.
And I thought, what is wrong with this? Something's got to change. And I realized I wasn't filling my cup. I wasn't taking care of me, where I'd continuously been so focused on growth. That element wasn't there. And if
Yeah.
you're not growing, you're dying. That's the harsh version of saying it, right? Because you eventually like to go back. But
True
if,
though.
if you're not growing,
Mhm.
how are you contributing? Because every time I grow, every time I learn something, whether someone wants to hear about it from me or not, they're going to. But
Mhm.
I'm able to share what I've learned because I want to help elevate other people.
Yeah. That's so true. I think we all reach that point. I think you guys can drop in the comments if you agree, where you're just like, ugh, like I don't know what's causing it, but I just in a funk. Like this just stinks. And I think now that we're getting into winter too, it's like for those of us that are in the Midwest, East
Yeah.
Coast.
One
Um,
thing I want to share, because we don't talk about this, right? We talk about growth, we talk about sometimes mindfulness and that sort of thing. If you want to instantly change your state, because state is everything, there's 3 key components, but I'll touch on one. If you radically want to change your state in an instant, move your body. What do I mean by that? First, evaluate how you are. Like,
yep.
what are you doing? You're probably breathing in your chest, your shoulders are hunched over, your body language. Stand up, do jumping jacks, move your body, take up space. Amy Cuddy talks about this in her TED Talk, but radically alter your physiology, and I promise you, you will change your state in an instant. If that's not enough, go walk around the block, go outside, get some vitamin D. Most of us are not moving our bodies enough. I'm not even saying exercise, I'm just saying change your physiology,
Mhm.
right? Emotion is energy in motion. If you're not moving, you're not going to have any energy, and that's going to affect everything.
So true. Even if it's like, I mean, it's so hard to commit. Like you mentioned, I'm going to lose weight this year. I had so many goals for 2020. Like I was like, I'm done having my babies. I'm going to lose weight. No.
Yeah.
So I had actually from your session at the summit, and I think it was Lauren Golden. She did goal setting. You guys were saying a lot of the same stuff about just setting realistic goals and just start as little as like 10 minutes a day,
Yeah.
20 minutes a day. And so I made a couple rules. One was I'm not allowed to work while I'm eating.
Yeah.
And
It's a good one.
Perfect one. And that was where I was like, okay, I can catch up on stuff I would normally catch up on my commute to work, or reading for 20 minutes a day. And that can be reading an article, a book, flipping through a Westell magazine, whatever it is, doing something. And that requires, like what you were saying, getting up, walking over there, or going to make more coffee, doing something. I think that's great advice.
Yeah, he has this acronym, Tony Robbins, because I'm friends with him, has this acronym. It's called NET time, not enough time. And that means if you don't have net time, if you can't find 10 minutes in a day, whether it's making your coffee, after you blow dry your hair, just find that 10 minutes, because if you don't have net time, you don't have a life, right? It's about prioritizing yourself. And if you can't prioritize you, it's really time for some self-reflection, but make that time to, even if it's finding a quick meditation, a quick podcast, YouTube inspiration. There's so many resources out there. It's so important. You've got to fill your cup, especially now.
Totally. We have so many questions. I think I'm just going to go ahead and start some Q&A, and then we can in a lot of the topics that we were planning on discussing with that as well. So these questions, I'm going to get some from all of you in the chat, and then for those of you that submitted them ahead of time through the survey, we'll weave those in and out because I know some folks weren't able to make it today. Okay, so this first one, how do you convince your employer your travel-related work may have stopped, but you are facing COVID year challenges and may be available as a value and worth more than a merit raise? So I think
my internet went out, so I only caught about.
So I think it's even though, so a lot of assistants have been managing travel, or were managing travel. That was a bulk. And because they're not anymore, maybe their employer is thinking they aren't worthy of a raise, but they're trying to advocate and say that, well, there were new challenges, and while they don't align with what I measured on for this year, it's still worth being measured on. And I am, you can use that still to advocate for a raise or a bump. So what would be your advice there, and how to outline that and bring that to your employer?
So one, the onus is on us. I'm going to say some real stuff that may seem abrasive or harsh or direct, but that's what we need, right? Nobody is looking out for our career path to the extent that we are. Why? Because they're all busy focused on themselves. Liz, I'm not looking out for you. You're not looking out for me, right? Those are just the facts. And so the onus is on us. Look at the spelling of that. I love that reference. It's on us to look for opportunities, look for frustrations. Where are there areas for improvement? Recently with COVID, it's more virtual based events. Maybe you're doing research. Maybe you're making recommendations to your different sales orgs, finance, whatever it is, to bring these people together. What have you done? That's where making the list of I am remarkable comes in, because maybe you've been curating culture, hosting virtual events, researching, negotiating those virtual events. Did you create public or private Slack channels or the internal messaging channels? Are you continuing to add value? Look for holes, because speak in terms the executives appreciate, right? Retention, morale, the bottom line. Think of those terms. What is your work doing that's affecting those? Because curating culture isn't just about having fun. It's about retention, right? Attracting and retaining talent is really expensive. Don't just think of it as planning fun stuff that they don't care about. Use those words. Take the things you may not think are important and make them important. You've got to peel back the layers and say, how does this impact the organization, and how will I tell the story, share the messaging to where my executive will care and act?
That's great. I love that. We have someone, Rachel Burton in the chat says,
Hi, Rachel.
welcome. She asks, in your book, Maggie, how are you able to read someone in 30 seconds and what do you look for or listen to?
So this is great. Body language. Do you guys know the number? I think it's 7. I'm going to butcher this, but say it's 7, 33, and 58. I don't even know if that adds up to 100, but it's all about delivery and body language. So if you say something, right, Liz, if I'm talking to you like this, how do I look? I definitely don't look confident, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so people will listen to 7% is the actual words that you're saying. Think about that. 97% of what and how you say it isn't even processed.
Mm-hmm.
That other 33% is tone and delivery. Liz, if I were talking really fast, you probably wouldn't receive the message and you'd be concerned with my facial expression, right?
It's true. Yeah.
But if I slow down, if I pause, you're going to look up. You'll actually pay attention. Oh, something important's being said. And the 55%, again, I'm making these numbers up, but it's somewhere in the 50, 37. The 55% is the body language. If you show up super aggressive, hands on your hips, shoulders back, standing tall, it's going to show that you're confident. If you're walking quickly, kind of hunched over, whatever, people are going to think, oh, that person probably doesn't have a lot of influence and they're just rushing around from here to there. So that's how I quickly combine all 3 of those things to gauge how is this person showing up, because I talked about this earlier, we're responsible for the energy we bring into a room. I want you to just chew on that. Think about that. How am I showing up? What's my posture like? Just a quick little adjustments. Elevate your head a little bit. Look up. When you walk through a doorway, I want you to say to yourself, make an announcement in your head, I'm here, because you're going to walk in confident and positive. Make eye contact with somebody quickly when you enter. There's another book out there. I think it's 92 tricks on how to talk to anybody, something like that. And I read that several years ago, and it was very powerful for me because as an admin, you're running from places and places. One of my HR people used to laugh at me. He's like, I love watching you run like a little ping pong ball across. And I thought, ouch, that's what I look like. But now I walk slowly and confidently. And so there's so many elements that are within our control of how we show up.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And it changes, like you said, it changes the energy. Like it really does. I mean, if you're stressed and anxious, even across a Zoom video chat, like that's going to come across, So I think, and that's something that I think we've all learned, that with this new virtual world, there is some forgiveness with, if you need to take 5 minutes, if you have back-to-back Zoom meetings and you just need to take 5 minutes and be late to your next one, take those 5 minutes, decompress, get up and take a walk.
Yep.
You get those fluids moving again, and allow yourself to do that.
I'm gonna share a secret, okay? Because we can't walk into a room here and think, oh, I'm here. And so I learned this at an interview a while back. The guy used to coach high-powered executives. He even worked with a couple of presidential candidates. Like, that's real, right?
Wow,
and he said, not a political thing, but when you think of Obama, right? When he interacts with people, he has this air about him and he makes you feel like you're the only person in the room. And this guy simplified it to me. He said, through the lens, when you talk to anyone, approach them when you show up on your Zoom. I've got 2 pink Post-its on either side of my camera, Liz. One of them says, I love you. The other one says, thank you. So when I show up to any meeting, to any webinar, on either side of my camera, I am constantly seeing, I love you and thank you. So think of how any interaction, any relationship, if you show up to any conversation through the lens of I love you and thank you, how do you think that conversation is going to go? That's powerful. That's powerful.
It's so funny. I actually thought of, again, not a political thing, just the air of Obama and how, and any, politician that's known for public speaking well, posture's always up. Yep. There's always a pause between a point to allow you to digest and think and not, keep going like you were talking about before. So Yeah, it's super interesting. Another question we have, let me see. I know we just talked. Well, Rachel, I'll get to you in a minute. We got to get to others. She's got a couple questions.
Rachel, call me.
All right. They're good though. We'll get to some folks that haven't had a chance yet. Linda has a question. Linda, would like to know, how do you show up during COVID?
How do I show up? It requires more effort. Is it
Yeah.
easy? No. Some days I want to crawl into a hole. Like that's real,
Yeah.
and that's the truth.
Mhm.
But I think of your executives, right? It's particularly if you work for chiefs. Do they phone in sick? No. Do they show up the day after the holiday party? Usually, right?
Mhm. Yep.
They those you've gotta emulate what your executives do, because people, whether you know it or not, I only learned this recently, but people are watching everything you say, everything you do, how quickly you respond. They may not comment, they may not tell you, but they are watching you. They are watching to see how you behave and how you show up. And so now, even more so, it's so important. If you didn't care how you show up, you wouldn't be on this call. I know that. And so you do care, but it's half of, I forget the statistic, but it's like 80% of success is simply showing up. And
Mhm.
sometimes that's the hardest thing to do. You don't want to, but once you get there, it's far easier. Like I relate it to the statement, I've never regretted working out, right? Getting me to put my shoes on, to walk out the door, to roll out my yoga mat.
Mhm.
That's the hardest part. But
Mhm.
once you're there, you feel so incredible on the other side, knowing that you've added value, you've showed up, you've delivered, you've executed.
It's so true. We have another question from one of our surveys. This assistant would like to know, they've said, I have been an EA for the past 20 years. I've been in my current role for 7 years. I know my job inside and out. How do you keep motivated?
It's Congratulations for your longevity and your loyalty. That's awesome. Uh, it's I get motivated, I get inspiration, not inside my organization, right? We are administrative professionals. There's often a ceiling there. They're not thinking about us. How do I further develop Maggie? What's her path? Some orgs, yes, that's awesome. But most of the time, likely not. And so it's on you to continuously pursue those training and development opportunities. Because when you do that, whether it's growth, coaching, a course, a certification, something that's going to immediately add a value to your executive, to your organization. Maybe it's public speaking. Go learn how to public speak so you can show others how to do that well and successfully. That's just an idea. Things where you previously struggled, if you can turn your struggles into your power, that's where the magic is. And
Yeah,
that's what keeps me motivated, is continuous growth.
totally. And it just, that trickles into your personal life too, I think. Like, have you found that
Oh yeah.
that in your professional life has just helped, like, in all other aspects?
I pursue growth in all forms, and it started. I've attended most of the conferences that are available. I won't name them all. There's so many now. And I got to a point where I know this stuff, and I'm not saying I know everything, because I definitely don't, but I expanded beyond the EA realm. And the thing that really ignited that fire within me was Tony Robbins' Unleash the Power Within, because you go and you work on your history, you work on your stuff, you unleash the power within. And it's really just has nothing to do with personal or professional, because we are human beings, right?
Mhm.
We're all human beings experiencing this thing called life. And to be able to grow in ways not specific to our career or field, but that's holistic,
Mhm.
because we are whole beings, that's where
Yeah,
it gets interesting. And I would encourage everyone on this call to pursue learning, growth, webinars, podcasts, books beyond the EA realm, because there's so much available to you out there.
right. Definitely. Another question is, how do you go from a large company mindset to digging deep and supporting the CEO of a tech startup? What can an EA expect that's different so I'm not blindsided?
Is this Rachel again? That sounds familiar.
That's what, well, this is part of the survey and we don't have names. So Rachel,
Okay.
we're getting all your questions in probably.
She posted it in the base group. That's why.
Oh,
So
there you go.
So I am not the best person to answer this question because I actually haven't been at one of these large behemoth companies. But what I can speak to, what I have heard is at larger companies, you're more of just a number. Again, I apologize for the directness here. Actually, I don't apologize.
I apologize.
Never apologize.
Something we
And
also
so,
do as women, I find, like, I'm trying to stop saying sorry and saying just.
yes. Yes.
Mhm.
But so in larger organizations, you're a number. That executive, that VP, that director, they leave, they move you around. Like we're just a number there. And so moving from a larger company so I've interviewed at larger companies and I've gotten coaching from some of our favorite people in the space. And these were my takeaways. If you go to a larger company, you may fly under the radar. If you go to a startup, if you're in a much smaller company, you wear a ton of hats. There will be a ton of frustrations. I'm speaking real time here from real experience, but it's so incredible because you get exposure and you get to learn so many different things. I think we're about 300 now. We hired HR for the first time just last September to give you an idea of how many hats we did. So I helped with IT and onboarding and so many different things. And so startup's an incredible opportunity for you to get exposure across the org. Is it fun all the time? No. Do you work late hours? Absolutely. But you get to create these really close, tight-knit relationships with your colleagues because you're constantly interacting and you're constantly helping each other. Larger organizations, you're going to be in silos. Again, from my understanding, I have no idea what I'm talking about. But I appreciate large companies. There's times where I want to go there and I don't want to be working from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. sometimes, and just to have that work-life balance. But I think everyone should have exposure to both just to know what it's like, but there are definitely very different aspects of each.
Definitely. Okay, Rachel, I'm going to get to another one of your questions because I really like this one. But they're beneficial to everyone. But you guys keep dropping your questions in because we got 12 more minutes, so we'll try and fit in as many questions as we can. In your book, how did sitting in on every executive meeting affect or add to your workload?
It didn't. So what's interesting is, let's say it's a 2-hour block of time, and these are weekly now. They used to be monthly. You've got to be present for that full 2 hours, and you get a lot of slacks, you get a lot of pings, and so it doesn't necessarily add to my workload, but it does indirectly, because where I was previously on top of and responsive to so many different inquiries and scheduling and emails, I don't want to say I lose that chunk of time because I definitely learn a lot while I'm in there, but it affects it. In terms of workload, I don't even look at it in terms of workload. I love being in there because I'm able to get perspective that I otherwise would not have. You get these ambiguous directions. It's very vague. And then you have to constantly have this slew of questions, which they're usually not interested in answering, right? You can ask a question that's not a yes or no question, and they reply, sure. And you're like, what? And that happens very often. And so the more you can insert yourself into the conversations, into the dialogue, into the email thread, into the meetings, do it. And I want to share this key phrase, and that is, just because you're not invited doesn't mean you're not welcome. If there are upcoming leadership meetings, if there's upcoming strategic planning, if you see that on the calendar, do an audit. Go several weeks out. Say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Boss, I'd love to sit in on this meeting for these reasons, for these outcomes. Can I? How would you feel about that? Great. Other times, if you're a little bit bolder, just show up.
Seriously, it's so true. And I'm dropping this as a comment right now because I think it's really important, and I don't want people to forget that. Sometimes it's not that they don't want you there. It's just sometimes they're too busy that they don't ask. So just, insert yourself. Hey, I want to show up to this, and show up.
And they may thank you later, because I'm constantly creating a list of action items, timelines, deliverables, owners, and then I'm able to follow up with that post meeting and check in, say, hey, where can I support you on this?
Yep. That's great. I think that that goes a lot with what we've been hearing a lot in our group in particular is aligning with executive goals and objectives and key results. And one of the easiest ways to do that and to get like the latest and be in those discussions as they're being formed or talked about or reviewed are those meetings. So that's great advice.
Absolutely.
Okay, we have more questions. Okay, Judy has a question. Hi, Judy. How how do you set goals as an EA while working from home? I'm going to assume that just to provide you some more context, Maggie, that means in terms of just being by yourself and not being in a work environment.
Yep.
So where do you start in setting those goals if you're still stuck at home?
So look at your executives' goals, right? Why are we here? We are here to elevate our executives, to help them reach their next level of success, to help their directs reach their next level of success. Because if their directs are successful, they're successful. If your executive is successful, we're successful.
Mm-hmm.
So one, have the conversation, right? We start with the
Yeah.
basics. Sometimes we overcomplicate things and it's so unnecessary, right? Well, what are my goals? What should I do? Your goals are probably written within the organization. Somewhere you can find them. And if you don't know, ask, right? It's all about communication. It's starting there. And then for you personally, depending on how your org works, set yourself some stretch goals. What are you going to do? Create goals, one, that relate to your executive and their team. Create a peer one. If you've got a team of EAs, create a goal there. How can you all, maybe it's attend events, maybe it's create a cultural event. Think of something that will add value to the organization that you're not already doing. Or if it's worked previously and were successful, amplify it, expand it. How can you add more value? And then set a personal goal. I'm a fan of saying 4 growth opportunities. If that's daunting for you in a year, say 1 per year. But think about what I said. The more you measure it, the better you can manage it. So definitely set some stretch goals. I do want to say one thing there is when we think about goals, I was, speaking from my own experience, so quick to think, oh my God, if I don't hit these goals, I'm going to get fired. That's immediately where my mind goes, right? So I just want to talk to that. Still does, right? And that's not true. Setting goals is to create a framework for you to show up and to go crush whatever it is and to help you go from here, because what got you here will not get you there. And so companies have roadmaps, executives have structure, there are incremental things to follow. And so why not do the same for you? Your future depends on many things, but mostly on you.
That's right. It is all on you. And there is, and it's on you to have that support network as well and seek that out. So I think for those of you, I saw a ton of you drop your LinkedIn profiles and joined after that. Drop your LinkedIn profile and start building out that support network today. Okay, another question. I'm seeing some on the chat, but I think we've answered actually most of them. So Rachel, I'm going to go back to your bucket of questions. This is a good one. Okay, she would like to know, in your book, Maggie, how do you advocate for a silver parachute? I tried, but I didn't fully grasp to follow through, and subject was changed. Rather, he added an addition to the proposed salary. Have you ever proposed for a silver parachute, or what advice would you have for that?
No, it's been a while. I've been at my current company 5 years, so I haven't gotten to that point, but I have heard of other people successfully negotiating it. So keep asking, right? A lot of that things, Rachel, I know what page you're talking about. Those are monstrous asks that I put on there relative to what most of us have now. And just for context, if you haven't read the book, please do. But just for context, it's asking for those big things. If you're working for a CEO, ask for options or RSUs that are specific to a VP title. They may balk, they may be shocked that you had the gall to ask, but continue to ask. Ask for an elevated title. Do you need an EA title working for a CEO? Are you doing just travel, calendaring, and expenses? Likely not. Ask for director of administration, director of executive operations. Yeah. And so on that page, I say these are big asks. Executives get golden parachutes. When they get acquired or bought, poof, those guys or gals are gone with their millions and we're left in the dust. And I've heard that countless times over. So how can we get some reassurances? Have I done it personally? No. Will I in future conversations? Absolutely. Continue to ask, because Rachel, I don't know if it was a sign-on bonus or a base. I hope it was more of an increase in base, because that's recurring revenue, right? A sign-on bonus is one time, but continue to ask for those things. You have more power now before you sign on the line than any other time in the organization until you are about to leave. And I don't recommend leveraging another offer, because on average, most people leave within 6 months after that anyway. So Bit of a tangent, but I hope I answered that.
No, that's good. Thank you. So a couple other questions that we have. Another one in your book. You use rather colorful language in some of your descriptives,
Huh.
which of course is published. I think it makes it more real. Some folks want to know, how do you apply that to an office setting? When is it good to be a little more casual or cavalier with language? What are your thoughts on that?
Depends who you ask and in what context. So I'll give you a couple of examples. We were at one of our big conferences several years ago. I just started working with Jason, and there's half executives, half ICs at the time, maybe 6 or 8 of us. And Jason looks over at one of the guys that worked with me. He's like, he said, Bill, what's Maggie really like? And I'm just sitting there like, gulp. And Bill says, she's exactly the same, except she swears like a sailor. I was like, thanks, Bill. But Jason didn't believe him initially. And so the other side of that, if I drop an F-bomb in front of a new hire, they're like, whoa, did Maggie just say that? Some people think I'm a total vanilla square. And I'll keep that. I'll take that. I think that's hilarious. And so it's walking a fine line. Do I go around swearing left and right? No. But do I use colorful language? Yes. Life is too short to be stiff. And if you're stiff and reserved, cool. Loosen up, lighten up, right? And then about my executives, they all swear. We are not a conservative company. And so to each their own. If there's judgment there, so be it. I'm cool.
I love it. Well, we just have a couple minutes left, so I would love for you to talk a little bit about where people can find your book. We're going to drop the link in the comments here, and I'm going to send this recording out, as well as all of the resources that Maggie has discussed in an email, but I'd love for you to tell everyone a little bit about it and where they can find it.
Okay, I'll share all of that, and then I'm going to, in case I forget, I've got one final line that is probably one of the most important lines I'll share. And so it's on Amazon, paperback, Kindle, just dropped on Audible last week. I don't even think I've announced that. Maybe I did. And then if you're interested in the mindset upgrade, that's also on my LinkedIn, and that includes the audio version of the book, plus previously recorded and not accessible sessions. And that was where I was interviewed on the 21-day mindset detox, plus a session that I talk about in the book, and that is called "This 3-letter word is holding you back." And that's another way where we can alter our state, is through our language and how we use that. So those are available. And then related to reviews and feedback, this was a quote our VP of HR said several years ago at another company. When I first heard it, I didn't really get it, and I thought that's gross, whatever. But now I think about it, and I use it, and I say it, and I sit with it all the time. And that is this: feedback is a gift.
Yeah.
It may not come from it, and it depends where we receive it from, right? If it's from a peer or a boss or maybe a spouse, we don't listen to our spouses, or at least I don't, rarely. Sorry, Scott.
Me neither.
It depends on the source, right? If you love and respect the source, you're gonna say, thank you. I'm gonna turn around and do something with this right now. But if you don't, you're just going to go, ugh, and then you're going to think of 5 other things to say about that person. But I want to invite all of you on this call, when you get feedback, number 1, don't defend it, please, particularly in reviews. Like, this is not the time to defend yourself. I want you to just sit with it, and your response should be nothing more than 2 words: thank you. Right? And if you don't fully understand what they're saying, or maybe you're like, this doesn't apply to me, ask them to elaborate, to expand. Can you help me understand? Can you give me a specific situation where I've done this? Can you tell me more? What is the impact? But get curious, because this is your opportunity. If you take all the feedback, and by the way, there's another book out there on Amazon. It's feedback. I've got a long list of stuff to give you, I think.
I love it.
Is about feedback. And as hard as it may be to receive feedback, I hate it. It stings, right? I want to be perfect. I want to be infallible, but I'm definitely not. It's even harder to actually deliver the feedback. Now you may say, what? Think about that, because you, as the deliverer of feedback, actually have to structure that conversation. Remember the 50, 55, 33, 7 number? That person has to come in and bring calm, compassionate body language. They've got to structure it and frame it in a way that's not abrasive, that's not direct. Sometimes there's the crap sandwich, which I hate, right? It's like say something positive, say the opportunity for improvement, and close with something. That stuff confuses me because I just want to know. And so related to the feedback conversation, I'll close with this. When you're having a feedback conversation, open the door for them to actually share real stuff. Say, tell me where I can improve. If you would change one thing that I've done, or how can I be better? Because if you are really committed to improving and reaching your next level, you're going to be asking, what are my areas for improvement? What sucked? Where can I improve? But really open that door for that person to share, and then just be quiet and listen.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful advice, I think, for any role, even if, that's me as a marketer, that's wonderful advice.
Yeah.
It's hard to get back because it means that there's room for you to improve is how I'm starting to look at it. Not that I failed. It's just that there's room to be better. So I think that you said it beautifully. That's wonderful.
And there's three, I know we're going over, I'm sorry. But if there's actually 3 types of feedback, and this book outlines them. And one is validation, right? Mm-hmm. Hey, Liz, how do I look in my new dress? I'm really not asking for you to tell me if I look weird. I am looking for you to tell me that I look fabulous and fierce.
That's right.
And so you've got to be careful. Like when people bring me documents or presentation, if I'm not sure what they're asking for, I will say, are you looking for validation, or are you looking for me to pick this apart? Because guess what my default is? and then the other, it's not validation. My husband will tell you that.
Right.
And then the other 2 are, I think it's development and coaching. And development is obviously the areas for improvement, the possible tip, that sort of thing. And then the coaching is really helping that person to reach their next level. And so you've got to ask. And then lastly, I love this stuff. Like if somebody brings you a deck, right? How does this look? I know I used the dress example, but let's talk about something work related. Mm-hmm. Say, how does this deck look? Instead of saying, how does this deck look? If I go to my counterpart, Claudia, she helped to edit my book. She helps with other things. I send it to her and I don't say, how does this look? I say, tell me what sucks. What would you change? Like I just use blunt because I'm not looking for validation in those conversations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great advice. Be declarative and clear on the asking end as well.
Yep.
Not just
Yep.
That's great. Well, Maggie, this has been an absolute pleasure. I think I speak for everyone. We could talk to you for hours. This has been so wonderful. And again, guys, I will make sure to send out all of the wonderful resources Maggie has discussed, including her book and our follow-up communications. And this recording will be available on our YouTube channel as well as in the announcements tab in our Facebook group. So you can go back and view it whenever you want. And thank you again. This was wonderful.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Liz. I appreciate it.